If I was crowned king of sports cards, this is what I would do. Alright, let me get a few things out of the way here first. I actually think the monopoly approach to licensed sports card production that's been the way of things for the last some years is the wrong way to go about things. I remember when I was a kid, there was a whole bunch of sports card production companies. I think that kind of competition encourages innovation and causes companies to push the boundaries a bit more creatively, which I think is something the sports card industry consistently needs. I've talked about this in a lot of videos, but over the past 10 years, there's been an explosion of color variations, color parallels in the sports card world. While I have nothing against it as a concept, if done in moderation, it has been taken so far away from moderation that it's become laughable. That being said, if there were multiple license holders, this likely wouldn't happen. If the market started to show that people were getting bored of too many color parallels, then the market would slowly shift towards some other innovative approach being taken elsewhere, and then that first company would have to rethink things to figure out other ways to attract customers. While there is room for kind of craziness and corniness in an environment like that, there's also room for innovation, and that's something missing in the sports card production process in recent years. When there's only one licensed production company per sport, hobbyists have no choice but to either take it or leave it when it comes to what that one company is offering. There's no alternative option for them to consider if they want to get into new cards. And I think that's happened a lot in recent years, where people don't really like a lot of the new products, so they just go back to the stuff they do like. But I think a production company is missing out on all kinds of potential customers by kind of pushing away people who have shown and proved they love sports cards, but just don't like what's happening in the last couple of years. They're pushing away their own customers. It doesn't make any sense. All right, so that's the first thing I do if I was king of all things sports cards. I'd make sure that there were multiple license holders to encourage innovation and make sure progress was happening consistently. We didn't get caught in ruts. Another thing I do as king of sports cards, related to sports card production, a lot of these are related to card production specifically, is related to preventing overproduction. In recent years, there's been a sports card production boom, but I feel like the approach to it hasn't been planned out well. Some cards that once were relatively rare and quite valuable, like even base select rookies from like 2017 and before, they've become so super common in more recent years of printing that it's affected the market perception of even those older, more rare print runs. I think this is a mistake. I don't think this is a well thought out way to go about doing it. Essentially, overproduction has not only affected the value of those overproduced cards, but it's lowered the value of cards from previous years in a kind of ripple effect. If I was king, I would bring in advisors to try to solve this overproduction issue, but in a way that meets the needs of people who approach the hobby in different ways. There should be a fun path in the hobby for people who have small budgets. There should be a path for high-end collectors and investors. There should be ongoing learning about what modern collectors are collecting and efforts made to help them have more fun on their collecting journeys. There should be ways for everyone to have a link into the hobby in the ways they like. I think if certain cards like, say, Chronicles Basketball, for example, are overproduced like crazy, but the variety of different styled cards in the mix remained diverse and the price was accessible even to kids, wonderful. Not every card has to turn into a big profit-making enterprise. Chronicles or something like that can be a fun, risk-free space where kids could buy some packs with their allowance money. The hobby needs some things like that. For me, as a kid, that was Collector's Choice and Fleer. I loved those packs. They were so cheap. I'd even say that as much as I don't like sticker autographs, a brand like Chronicles is a place for it. Load up Chronicles with sticker autos. Use sticker autos exclusively in inexpensive products. It's cheaper and more logistically simple for a production company to get sticker autos, so do it for that kind of inexpensive product. But one hard and fast rule should be no sticker autos on mid to high-end product. Sticker autos on products like National Treasures or Flawless should be a punishable offense. Production company CEOs should have to put their head and arms in a pillory in the town square if they commit this blasphemous offense, so says the king. Similarly, I would say get completely rid of the whole memorabilia that's not connected to any player, event, or game in any way. I would rather have no memorabilia piece at all than a piece from the Goodwill bin. And with that influx of too many of these kinds of non-affiliated memorabilia pieces, I think it actually brings down the collective appreciation for Jersey Relics as a concept. I like it as a concept inside of a card, but only if it actually has real connection to that player. Otherwise, what's the point? I think it'd be awesome if cards with relics had like a little QR code or something on them, and you could scan it and watch a clip from the actual game in which the jersey was worn. I think something like this would bring a whole new level of appreciation to Jersey Relics. It'd be a little bit complicated for the production company, but if you do it at least for cards that are serial numbered, it's not that hard to do. The next thing I do if I was king of sports cards is spend time figuring out how to improve the community aspect of the hobby. A lot of what becomes the community of sports card hobbyists is not within the actionable space of a sports card production company, but at the same time, I think there's things that a company can do to improve the connections between people. One part of this, I think, is building a more meaningful bridge between vintage collectors and modern collectors. For a lot of people, this hobby is split into cliques of people who are exclusively in one space or another. From a card production company standpoint, I think they're missing out on having these vintage collectors connect into modern cards. Right now, the modern production process pushes the vintage collectors away, which again, I kind of mentioned this earlier, it doesn't make any sense. You have this group of thousands and thousands of people who have been interested in cards for decades, but you're pushing them away with the production, the way that production happens with the modern cards. They're probably the most likely group of customers. So why push them away? It just seems so strange to me. I think maybe the effort by production companies to bring in vintage names into modern card sets is something they have done to try to bridge that gap, but I think that it's a completely failed effort. Very few vintage Mantle collectors or Wilt Chamberlain collectors have any interest in a modern, shiny, blingy card with that player on it. It actually is like fingernails on a chalkboard. But I think that if companies had more effort to maybe bring in something like a more of a buyback kind of approach, there could be a better way to build a natural bridge between vintage collectors and modern collectors. For example, if you could buy a modern pack of baseball cards, but scattered regularly throughout the packs with some sort of pack odds, there were actually cards from the 50s and 60s of some different Hall of Famers. I think that'd be amazing. It encouraged the vintage collectors to participate a little bit more in some of the modern stuff, and it helped make the modern collectors gain more knowledge and awareness of vintage cards. And I'm sure I wouldn't be the only one who would be more likely to buy into a break if I had an actual chance to hit an actual Hank Aaron or Willie Mays or Julius Erving card from the 50s, 60s, or 70s. That would be super cool to have that possible chance. I think this idea is something that could be good from a business standpoint and could be good for the community of hobbyists. I actually think there's a lot more that could be done from a community building angle when it comes to sports card production. This was just one little idea to bridge the gap between vintage and modern collectors, but I think there's all sorts of things a business could do to improve the community aspects of the hobby. As of now, the card production companies are about as far away from the community of card people as they can get themselves, it seems. That just doesn't make sense to me. The sports card industry in many ways exists because of the community aspects of the hobby. And for a business like Panini or Topps to kind of position themselves as faceless, soulless voids that lack any connection to the collectors just seems like an obvious business mistake. I know they're busy, but it's hard for me to imagine how much they're missing the boat when they seem to have no connection with the actual hobbyist community, and even, like customer service so terrible. It just seems like a really bad business structure. I don't understand. It's hard for me to understand why aren't they fixing some of these bad business structures. Related to business structures that need improving, another thing I'd do if I was king of sports cards is focus on improving transparency in the sports card industry. This is a big one that I think has ripples in all sorts of different spaces. Hobbyists should know how cards are printed, how cards are distributed, how allocation works. It shouldn't be a mystery and a result of this or that personal connection and backdoor dealing. The business aspects of the hobby should be transparent and not have the room for shenanigans to easily hide in the shadows like they currently can. I think a lot of the cynicism that comes up isn't necessarily just because of some shenanigans that happen. It's because there's so much possible room for shenanigans and we can't fully know when it's a shenanigan and when it's not. And I think that's just a result of poor practices, internal controls, poor practices of being transparent. Transparency in things like print runs on base and unnumbered parallels as well, or pack odds for different cards, and other things like this. This should just be common practice. Not being transparent creates all sorts of problems. People can be cheated more easily, people can be taken advantage of more easily, shenanigans can stay hidden, dishonest actors can have a field day. But with more transparency, it's easier to create an atmosphere of trust in the sports card industry, and the current lack of trust that exists is extremely evident and obvious. All right, you know what? I could keep going on with this. I'm finding it extremely easy to keep finding different things to add to this video, but for now, I think I'm gonna stop here since this video is becoming quite long. Maybe someday I'll do a part 2 of this video if this becomes popular. What about for you? If you were king of sports cards, what are some changes in the industry that you think would be important to bring? Let us know in the comments below, or if you have your own YouTube channel, perhaps you could even make a video response to this video outlining some of your thoughts. I'm not doing a giveaway or anything like that, but I just think this makes sense as a video topic. So if you want to do a video response to this for your own YouTube channel, link me and let me see it. I'd love to check it out. But for now, check you in the next one. Peace.